Welcome! This is Her Identity Project, a safe space for women to explore faith, self-discovery, and personal growth. Here we will journey together to become our best whole selves, spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally. It's time to let go of everything that is holding you back from becoming the woman God created you to be. If you're ready to reclaim your authentic self, stick around. I'm your host, Ashley Iduda, and this is Her Identity Project. Welcome back. This is Ashley Iduda with Her Identity Project podcast. I'm excited to be here today with my guest, Eugenia. Eugenia, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, actually. Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to get to know you better. So what I'd love to do is just have you introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from, maybe what location you're in now, and then of course, what you do and the kind of impact you make on the world.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm from Mexico, and I'm actually currently in Mexico visiting my mom. But I actually migrated to Canada 14 years ago. So most of the time I do live there. I had the opportunity to become a digital nomad in the past 3 years. So during the winter, I come to the south to avoid the freezing cold.
Yeah.
And I do what I do is I'm a self-love and empowerment coach, and I also am from my past that is still working on it while my business is growing. I am a registration manager for international conferences.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
You're wearing so many different hats. So it sounds like you're staying very busy and it also sounds like you're fulfilled. So I'd love to ask you a little bit more about like all these different ventures you're doing. And I know as well that you are a fellow podcaster. So you have a podcast as well that I'm excited to talk about too. So first, I'm curious to ask you about the well-being portion. Can you tell me more about that part?
Yeah. Well, that one uh well to grow. Yes, to grow. Like it the idea came after I did the certification as a coach in habits. Like back in 2014, I started changing my eating habit. Like I was doing already yoga for a while. And
Okay.
when my body and mind finally connected, they were like,
Ah,
okay, you need to start like, eating better and start doing things differently. So then I started changing my eating habits. And the same coach that I was following, she offered a certification. And I was like, okay, why not doing it? Just, by curiosity and to learn a bit more. And
yeah.
it was so interesting because what I loved about it, it was holistic, right? Like body, mind, and soul. So I
Yes.
was like, okay. And I saw so many changes, in my life at any level that I was like, yeah, like I need to show this to people. Like I feel so good in my own skin that I really want to share it. Because even though when I was not sick, but I was not healthy either.
Yeah.
It was something like in between. I was like, okay, no, yeah, there's something more to do, like to take care of my body and feel better and have more energy, and like that. So that's really kind of like the beginning of where I am now. Like, I mean, I have shifted a lot and transition and all that transformed during this period of 10 years, but that was kind of like the initiation of the idea of the well-being project.
Oh, I love I asked you that because I didn't know where that fitted with your journey, but it's beautiful that that was the start of kind of a betterment of being like the best version of yourself. If you don't mind, I love to go deep quickly. So Can you give us more of like a real example of how that changed your life? You said that you had noticed
Mhm.
that it had such profound effects, and you
Yeah.
talked about the holistic aspect of like mind, body, and souls.
It was really, well, first, the way I was eating, like changed my eating habits, like little by little, of course, because it takes time and it takes money and energy, basically how I started. But then also was more like meditation. Meditation for me, like literally changed my life. I
Really?
used to do, yeah, like before, like the Oprah 21 meditation challenge, and then I will not meditate for until the next one or whatever. So it's really when I started meditating more and more. And yeah, that's really
What
what it got me in.
what's, the biggest thing you notice change in your life when you meditate?
My thoughts.
Your thoughts. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
when we meditate more often is because at the beginning, I mean, it has varied a lot, the different kind of meditations that I done, more like guided or sometimes just with background music or sometimes just in silence. It have changed a lot. At the beginning, it was more like guided meditations.
Yeah.
But then I started like shifting to more like really like observing and listening. And that's the part that it's challenging at the very beginning because we don't want to see that aspect of us, our shadow, as we call it, right? But then when we
Yes.
realize, no, yeah, that's part of me. And that voices are also there, and also recognizing the different voices in my head because it's not only one. We have the ego, and then we have here our soul or intuition. So it's really like making understanding, mm, like really making the difference of saying, okay, this is one voice and this is another one. So then facing the ego and then started listening more to what my soul wanted to tell me. So it was really that shift on what meditation has really created that change in my life.
Yeah, I love that you brought this up because you said shadow self, and that's something I want to talk about because up until just a few months ago, I never knew what a shadow self was. And I
Oh,
learned about it through a guided meditation. I had
okay.
found an app, and so I just, I started to learn. I did like a 7 or 10 day challenge on this shadow self, and it went very in depth. And I was just really shocked at I don't know how to explain it, but it made me understand myself in such a different way. And it made me realize that there's so many different facets and like parts to who we are. And so many times we're struggling with like my good side or my bad side, or like these positive thoughts, or like what we would consider like negative thoughts. But the beauty for me was that it helped me learn to love myself as a whole. Like it helped me to integrate um the shadow self, like the parts of yourself that maybe you were taught weren't good as a kid growing up, or maybe somebody said something to you and you internalize that as your identity. And so you grow up, saying all this negative stuff and believing these negative things, but instead of shaming ourselves for it, it teaches you to be okay with it. That, yeah, these are parts of me and they're not bad. They're just hurt parts of myself. Do
Yeah.
you have a similar experience, or would you explain it a different way?
No, it's actually, no, it will be the same way. Because I think when we, as you said, when we integrate that shadow part with our light side, is when we can really and truly and fully love ourselves.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we might say, "Oh yeah, I love myself," but it's not true. Until we don't accept all those parts, we don't. As simple
Yeah.
as that.
Yeah. It was a really beautiful part of my healing journey. I mean, that's what led me to want to start this show because I was really suffering with my self-worth and I was actually just going through like a little bit of depression and confusion and like a transition part of my life. And I just knew I wasn't okay. And I knew I kind of needed therapy, but I couldn't really afford it. And so I just said, like, I'm going to take some time to heal. And so it was when I discovered um I actually heard a pastor's daughter. She's really famous. There's a pastor, T.D. Jakes, and his daughter, Sarah. I think her name's Sarah Robert Jakes. She wrote a book about self-love. And she was actually being interviewed on Mel Robbins' podcast. And it was one of the first times I had heard anybody talk about shame and how you can't truly love yourself until you can say like it's okay that I did that, or it's okay that all these things we internalize that make us
Yeah.
feel bad or ugly or not good enough. I think we don't recognize it, but those type of thoughts really change how we show up in the world and how we can accept love from people too.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, it's like those dots, it's really has a lot to do with the vocabulary that we use with ourselves. Because one of the things that I learned, it was like the more I care about myself, and then and one of the things that I started shifting was my inner critic vocabulary, because unfortunately we are our worst enemy. Like
Yes.
sometimes we say things to ourselves that we don't even will tell someone else. So
Yeah.
how is that possible, right? So the more aware we can be of changing our vocabulary, our behavior change and our relationships, not only with ourselves but with others, shift. Like at
Yeah.
least that's my personal experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go down your journey a little bit more. So you had this shift, you started meditating
Mhm.
and you started
Yeah.
kind of getting into the self-love. So what was the catalyst? Like what made you want to go down the road of becoming a self-love and empowerment coach?
Okay. Well, like I told you, like that was like when I started was like 10 years ago and has been transformed and shifted. But really, like what it did that shift, it was the transition of my father. He passed away in September 2019.
Oh, I'm
And that
so
was, thank you. And that was really like yeah, like I started questioning my whole life, like every detail. Like, am I happy at my work? Am I happy at my husband at that time? Do I feel fulfilled? All these
wow.
questions. And unfortunately, or fortunately, most of
Yeah,
the answers were no.
really.
And then so I decided, well, actually, it was good that it was kind of like we were on the same page when we decided to separate. We were together for 10 years.
Wow.
And yeah, like we said, like, yeah, we noticed that we love each other more than we thought. But at the same time, we noticed that we were better off, like, in each, like, our own ways. So that was very, very hard. That was very
Yeah.
hard. And
So
then,
much
so
transition and loss all at the same time. So you said
oh
your father passed in 2019
yeah.
and I can't imagine. I'm a daddy's girl. I'm blessed like my dad's still around. He's
That's
about
great.
to turn 80 and I can
Wow.
see him aging. So every time I
Mhm.
get to be with him, it's like I get emotional because I'm aware that he won't always be here.
Mhm.
So I think it is so powerful though that that made you realize, kind of, I'm guessing, like live every day as if it's your last. Like, did it make your father's
Mm,
passing make you realize like the beauty of life and how important it is to be true to yourself and your own needs?
yeah, in a way, yes, because he passed away like suddenly. He was in the
Oh,
hospital for five days, so it was everything like so fast. It was unexpected. He was not sick or anything. So it's like,
wow.
so it's when I noticed life can go like this, and it's
Yeah.
like, so what am I doing with my life? Am I
Yeah.
really happy with it? It was no. It wasn't. It was no. I didn't realize that I was actually living in a comfort zone, and in the comfort zone there's no magic in there. And I was like, I need to go and really search for that magic that life is. And so many things have shifted since then, you know, like he passed away, and then my relationship, my divorce finished. And then one of my best friends broke up with me. So it was like, you know, one thing after the other, one after the other. But I was like, oh, wow.
Wow.
It was a huge layer. Yeah, it was like within 2 years or something. Like I was like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. Your whole life was disrupted. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what it takes sometimes too. I mean, I even know
Mm,
people sometimes have to hit rock bottom before they
yeah.
make a change. And something else you just said I wanted to point out, because I was doing something some people call like the wheel of life, where you evaluate all these different parts of your life.
Okay.
So like your career, your finances, your like your impact on the world if you serve, um your relationships, you know. And so when I was doing that exercise, I also had to evaluate what my most important, I think its need was. And I realized that my need to feel safe was stopping me
Mm,
from being fulfilled, because the fear would set in. And so anytime I would dream of like, oh, I have this dream in my heart, I'm going to do this. And then I would feel scared. And then I would say, no, like, I need to feel safe. This is too scary. And so, because I was
mhm.
prioritizing the need for certainty, I think that's what it was the need for certainty. That's when I recognized like I can't grow and prioritize certainty. Like the two, they don't go together.
Not at all. And that's the thing, because we are so afraid of the unknown,
Yeah.
right? We are so
Yes.
afraid of an unknown, but it's where. But the thing is, if we think about it, if we go back to our lives, for how many decades we've been living, most of the things we were going through, it's unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. It all is.
When we just really like jump in, it's like, okay, let's see what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you about your self-identity when you had lost your father and lost your best
Mhm.
friend and in a way lost your husband. Did you ever question your worth at that point in your life or at any point in that time?
Uh, I I don't think it was like questioning. It was more like actually going through the healing process of it.
Yeah.
Uh, because mm, I do believe of what I have experienced, and that's what I'm so grateful. Even when my father is not in this plane anymore, it's I keep learning from him. And one of the things that I was able to heal through his passing, and then be able to reflect of what was going on in my life, and why was I having that lack of self-worth. It actually became, it was a lot from his side. The way, I mean, the way he was raised and the way he was, it was very subtle, but it was something that uh, I noticed that the lack of self-worth, it had to do a lot with him. So what it happens is like something that like my father, I mean, he was an adorable person and loving and stuff, but at the same time he was kind of like a macho person,
Yeah.
and very subtly, like I guess I pick up these things just from the behavior with myself and also with my mom, even though things were not told. Uh, but the thing is, what happened is he really started valuing my mom until she was able to provide financially at home, because he was not able to do it anymore at certain point.
Okay.
So one of the things that I learned from there was to be an independent woman,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I things that I needed to understand, that my value as a person, my worth, it has nothing to do with the things that I have to show, or things that I have to work hard or to bring money to the table. It has nothing to do with that. At this moment, I know that my worth is just based because I'm alive, I am here, I am worthy. And I know it now to the core. But of course, it was a long process to actually, remove all those layers of removing that programming and beliefs and, yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people can relate to that because most of us kind of get our definitions of who we are, or what's important to us, whether we realize it or not, from our upbringing, and just whatever our programming comes from, what our parents usually, our upbringing and what
Yeah,
they thought,
usually.
comes in. And so without questioning yourself, I think it's easy for a lot of people to float through life living a certain way that may not be in alignment with who they really are inside. And so that it's sad they can go through life really unhappy and never even really question it. So it's kind
Yeah.
of sad because you lost your dad, but beautiful at the same time because out of
Yes.
that pain, like you rose into your highest self.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, for me, the pandemic was a blessing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
seriously,
Yeah.
I took a year really, like, to go, okay, let's go deep. And I was like, because this was actually my second divorce. So I was like, okay, I'm the common denominator. So what's going on
Oh,
in there? So I really took it to go deep and then see those different parts of myself again, going back to the shadow and what was it there, what were my wounds, what I needed to heal to really like come back. And now I can say that I live more like in peace and joy and in authenticity as well. I try to be myself as much as I can. I don't care much about anything else. So still a pleaser, people pleaser, recovery, things like that. But it has been quite a process in the past 5 years to work and on all that. But it's so beautiful at the same time. It's
yeah.
like to see how I have transformed and how I have shifted, and how good I feel inside is just like, it's so fucking worth it, really, the
Yeah.
journey.
I love that because you're beaming talking about it, and I'm beaming listening to you talk about it. You probably feel so proud of yourself because I feel that way too. I'm brand new in my journey. I feel like I
Yeah.
just rose from the grave or whatever, like just a
Yeah.
few months ago. But it is so empowering, and I think it's worth saying that it's so important because this day in the world, people are busy. Everybody is so busy. and so tied to their phones, and what's consuming their mind is all the information being thrown at us. And so
Mm,
I fear that women don't stop enough to actually have these moments that
mm,
you had and that I had, where my journey is a little different because I had to kind of, nothing happened. I just had to recognize that I wasn't okay. And I had to be
mm,
brave enough to ask for my husband's support. I said, hey, I'm not okay and I need time to heal and like figure this out, because I was so unhappy that I was taking it out on
mm,
him. And I was blaming him,
mm.
actually, right? If I'm going to be really transparent, our marriage has been very tumultuous, is a good word, like up and
Okay,
down and
up and
up
down.
and down. We've been married for 10 years. And I'm happy to say our marriage is at the most beautiful spot it's ever
Mm,
been in. And I thank God, because it's only because I stopped to make my needs and myself a priority and
yes.
say, I'm hurt. Yeah, right? It's like, yes, like I'm hurt. What's wrong with me and how can I like not fix myself, but you know what I mean? I had to
Yeah.
learn about the shadow self, and I had to go deep and confront stuff that happened when I was a child. And this
Mm,
is great because you talked about this earlier. I had to take personal responsibility instead of blaming and shaming and pointing fingers at my husband and being like, everything's your fault, right? I
yeah.
finally was able to say, oh, like my pain has shown up and like taken over my life. And that the person I've been for the last 10
Mhm,
years was like a hurt person acting out of anger, actually, and
mm,
pain. And so yeah, it's been a journey, and I think all women deserve and need to go down that path. So I hope people do listening feel inspired to slow down and listen, like you said in the
mhm,
beginning. You have to stop and be still and kind of question, like, am I in a healthy place? And if you know you're not,
mhm.
do something about it. So you
Exactly.
you're the coaching expert, not me. So if somebody is in that place, like, how would they start? What kind of advice would you give someone who is kind of just recognizing that maybe they have self-worth issues, or maybe anger is driving them, or they're miserable? Like, how do they start to pull themselves out?
Mm. I think it depends exactly where they are. But as you're saying, like anger is one of the things. And you said you were also angry, and I have a client that she was also there. In that case, it's really start with the emotion, because we were
Mm,
not taught to actually experience our emotions. That if we keep containing them, I mean, at one point we're gonna explode. So it's really about going through those emotions and process them. And sometimes they may have a name. It could be anger, but sometimes it's a mix of them. And there's no need really to label them, but just really like just let them flow through the body. One of the things that I actually recommended to one of my clients was to take 2 minutes, because she didn't want it to leave the emotion, and I was like, just take 2 minutes a day to experience it, because what happened with her, she was not allowed to feel. That's how she was told by her father.
yeah.
So so I said, you're not used to it, and it makes sense that you're afraid of it.
Mm,
So
mm,
then this is what I recommended. And of course, she will start with 2 minutes, but then eventually, I mean, if you are already there, it might take you more, but it's just to have that little courage, to to experience that. And then she said, oh, because I asked her, like, how many minutes then do you take? And I was like, oh, at what point I actually took 5 minutes. And she was like, and I felt such a relief. And I was just, yes. Because emotion is energy and motion. So it's really about letting it pass through our body and let it process and let it go. And it's, of course, it's little by little because we cannot know for how long we have been containing those emotions, but really being brave enough to take those little moments of processing that. It doesn't matter what is it, and do it in a safety way, because then anger, of course, probably, someone feels like punching something, or like do it on the bed, or finding ways to express those emotions in a safety way for the person and for others.
Yeah, that's beautiful advice. It made me think that I learned the phrase name it to tame it. And it was really neat because once you can recognize what emotion it is,
Mm-hmm.
it can easily go away because you've called attention to it, and you can let it go at that point. You can say like, oh, I'm angry, but I can choose to feel this way instead. And
Uh-huh.
so I heard recently that emotions, and I love that you said emotions are energy in motion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um I heard that an emotion only actually stays in your body for 90 seconds. So
Mm.
that it was so like mind blowing. I had never heard that before. I don't know the science. I didn't like look it up to make sure it was true, but I do trust the person that said it. And so I thought, well, then we always have the power to take ourselves, to change our state and to take ourselves out of that emotion, rather than just like hanging on to it or letting it drive us. But your advice to stop
Mm.
and feel it, I think, is so important because it's as simple as like, oh, like what physical, not symptoms, but like when I'm angry,
Yeah.
like I was in the kitchen with my husband over the summer when I was learning all this, and he said something and I felt triggered. And so I thought, oh, I can feel my body getting hot. I can feel my heart beating faster just by what he said. And I thought,
Yeah.
I'm angry right now. Why, like, what about this is making me angry? And it was the
Mm.
first time in my life I had ever slowed down to just be aware of it, like just the
Yeah.
awareness of it,
Mm-hmm.
because so many people kind of, go through life without ever even like questioning what they feel. So I love that advice. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it's about like pausing and really, if we can, because probably sometimes we might be, I don't know, doing something or with other people that we cannot really express it. But if
Mm,
we can really go with it and say, okay, this is it, not just, yeah, we can choose another emotion, right? But it's
yeah.
really being aware of saying, okay, this is the emotion that I have at this moment, and saying, okay, I can process it. I'm going to take 2 minutes just to go
Mhm.
through, or I cannot. But later on, I'm going to go and look at it. Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if we just ignore it, again, it's just like piling it up, right? And that's what we
Yeah.
don't want.
And I love also kind of full circle, like you said, emotions are meant to be expressed. They're not meant to be
Yes.
held in. And I feel like people are wired differently. There's always seems to be a type of person that doesn't express their emotions. And they're the people who
Yeah.
hold it in and then they blow one day, like out of nowhere. And you're
Yeah.
going like, where did this come from? So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that that's really good advice. And then when you
Yeah.
say, like acknowledge the emotion and take 2 minutes to process it, what do you mean? Like, what does that really look like in those 2 minutes? Like what should we be thinking or doing or
That's the thing. We don't have to think. We just
Mm,
have to feel it. It's more like, okay, I feel sadness. Like, okay. And then if we really focus in feeling it, probably that dot is gonna come like saying, okay, I got sad because of this dot, but it's not us trying to figure it out upside down, you know? It's more like,
okay.
okay, it's here. And it was, now I notice I have this sadness because I listened to this song, and that song, yeah, it remind me of something.
Sure.
Or something like that. It could be something like connecting things. But one of the things I want to bring up, one that you mentioned before, it's the triggers.
Mm,
Because what happened is, uh, everything is a mirror of us, right? It's either something that it's I mean, as we say, it's triggering us because it's something that we have to work on it, which is most of the time what it happens. And it's
yeah.
like, it's about then wondering and saying, okay, so why am I getting triggered because of what that person said, or what that person did? It's because it has usually has to do something with the past. So it's about wondering why that trigger us, because it might have to do with one of our core wounds, either if it's like, for me, for example, it's rejection, or probably it's abandonment for someone else, or
Oh,
so it's important to be aware of where those triggers are coming, because one person can trigger you here and another one here, and so at the end it's never about the others. We're just mirroring who we are. So it's like, okay, what do I have to work in myself to avoid or to heal those triggers?
yes. This is so good. You're taking me back. Like I learned all this stuff in such a short amount of time and I haven't talked about it in a while and I'm going like, "Oh yeah, the core wounds. That's exactly what it was." Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And that's the thing, like, once we understand them, because in a way they're always going to be there. But then if I get triggered, it's like, okay, yeah, it's my wound of rejection. Like that's
Yeah.
that's what is hurting me now. But I know that wound is there. It's part of me. It's part of my shadow, if I want to call it. And it's accepted, it's loved, and it's okay.
Aw. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when I said name it to tame it, maybe that's what that applies to is associating the
Mm.
emotion with the core wound. Because once you
Yeah.
can do that, like you said, and it makes so much sense because then you can get rid of it so much faster. Then
Oh,
your
yes.
awareness is like, oh, it's this again. It's
Exactly.
like, oh, this is my
Mhm.
issue. And then, you get used to it.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is beautiful. Thank you so much. You have so much wisdom to offer.
Thank you.
And we know you offer coaching and you also have a podcast. It's called The Midlife Butterfly. Um,
Yes.
I know we have to wrap up soon, but tell us a little more about your podcast. Like, what's it about? What inspired the name?
Mm. Huh. The name really inspired me because midlife butterfly. Uh, because of the season that I am this moment. Like we're just going to transition through transition, right? Either if
Yes.
it's the loss of someone or a breakup, either if it's a romantic partner, or if it's a friendship, or if I'm not a mom, but there's a lot of moms that are empty nesters in this period. Like there are so many shifts that we are going constantly and constantly.
Yes.
So I do believe that once again we go to self-love, once we get to love ourselves and know who we are, it's gonna be easier to go through those transitions in life,
Yeah.
right? So, and really again taking that pause of cocooning and going within and see what is there. so we can then, you know, go again and fly as a butterfly once again, because
Yeah.
it's a continuous process all the time. So that's what really inspired that name. And again, like the topics that I'm touching there is really like transformation. It's about empowerment. It's about pleasures in lives, and of course, the spirituality. That it's a topic that is also I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's lovely and it's very much needed. And something that I can really identify with is your analogy or metaphor of the butterfly. Because well, clearly it's a metaphor for transformation, but I think
Mhm.
um over the summer when I was feeling not myself and stuck and unhappy and unsure of where I was going to next, um, I felt like I was in the goo phase. Like I've
Mhm.
seen those images you've posted and they
Yeah.
speak to me so clearly because now that I've evolved and like gotten through the goo and grown my wings, so to speak. You know, I'm not there
Mhm.
yet, but like I do feel freedom and I do feel
Mhm.
liberated. And you finally, when you can truly tap into like your authenticity, and for me I would say it is God's will for my life when what I'm doing is truly in alignment with who I am and where I should be going. It's a beautiful journey and it flows. You're no longer like
Yes,
stuck and trying to force things and feeling,
exactly.
yeah, it's just such this push and pull, but when you just are in the flow, and in the spirit of God, for me, it's just it's beautiful, and you're reminded of how beautiful life is and what a gift it is to be alive, and you just see the world so much differently.
Mm. Yes, yeah, it's everything is a perception. So it's how we want to see it, and the more I
Yeah.
guess we do the inner work and we go to, again removing those layers, and we start seeing like how beautiful we are within, and we can start loving ourselves, and how we start shifting our outer world because we change our inner world. So
Yes.
it's when everything, yeah, it's when magic happens. That's the beauty of
It
life.
is. It's totally where the magic happens. And I think
Yeah.
that's a beautiful place for us to kind of stop at is the importance of being internally driven. I think
Yeah.
for me that was such a big takeaway when I wasn't, because you talked about the recovering, was it a people pleaser? What did you say? The
Yes.
recovering,
Yeah.
I'm a recovering people pleaser too. And that whole journey, it's so hard to live that way. It's so exhausting because
So
you're
exhausting.
trying to please other people. Everything you do is outside of yourself. When you can truly be internally focused, like nothing really matters anymore as long as like
Yes.
you're in alignment with yourself, your true
Yes.
self. And for people who are faith believers like me, like your true self is coming directly from God, and when you have that connectedness to his life source, he is helping guide you along the way. But I think that this is such an important message, and it's been an honor and a blessing to get to know your heart. You're so beautiful, like inside and out. And
Thank you.
um, it's just so important. I feel like every woman should take the time to make themselves like their own best friend.
Yes, definitely. That
Yeah.
changes all. Yeah, because that's the thing. We're with ourselves 24/7,
Yeah.
right? We're always here. We're always here. So
Yeah.
it has to be the priority. Otherwise, um, we feel depleted and frustrated because if we keep giving and giving when we are not filling our own cup.
Yeah.
It's just so, so draining. And
Yeah.
that's the idea, really. Yeah, I guess it's about taking the power back. That's what I love, like empowerment, because it's first is taking responsibility. So we leave the victim out and taking that responsibility or power back, because I mean, we are more powerful than we actually think. And
No,
once we
100.
realize it, is like we can do whatever we want, definitely.
Yes.
But it's about having that courage and doing it even if we feel fear. Just go through it, because it's so worth it.
Thank you. This was like needed for my soul. I think if I'm being honest, I've been in my own head lately. And what you just said really is speaking to my heart. It's like the
Mhm.
reminder that like I am unstoppable and I am worthy of every like beautiful and perfect gift, that God has to give me. And who am I not to go pursue it? Like
Exactly.
who am I not to? So
Hmm.
yeah, it is about like reclaiming our power, like reclaiming ourselves. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it's awesome. I love the work you're doing. Where can people find you online?
I guess the easiest way would be to go to my Instagram account. It's at Kenasiu, Kenasiu. And then from there, the link tree has over there my website. It has some freebies in there. It's gonna have the link also to the podcast, and yeah, and much more stuff that they can find in there.
It's so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yes,
Well, thank
I
you
am
so
too.
much. I loved our time together.
Well, thank you, Ashley, for the invitation. Has been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you for listening. If you got something out of this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe to Her Identity Project on your favorite podcast platform. Make sure you're notified about new episodes. Please hit the like, the share buttons, get on social media, spread the word. Please take time to leave me a review. That would mean more to me than you could ever know, and it helps get eyes on this show so that other people can just get all the goodness out of it. If you're loving it, please hit me up in my DMs. I absolutely want to hear your feedback. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.